Season 31 of Diablo 3 is here. Let's have a look at how we're going to play the Rathma Army of the Dead build for Necromancers, starting off with the skills. The way we're going to be mowing down our enemies with this build is going to be with, obviously, Army of the Dead, summoning a massive army of death to pummel the targeted location. The skeletal army knocks all affected enemies towards the center. Now, this is usually on a big 120-second cooldown. However, what we're going to be focusing on is reducing that cooldown so we can use it pretty much instantly after we use it. Apart from that, we are going to be also using some minions to do our bidding. Starting off then with our main reanimation skill here, it's going to be Command Skeletons. Command skeleton minions to attack the target and increase their damage. And the passive, periodically arising skeletons from the ground, the minions will attack your enemies. Generally, they are quite good at finding who to attack on their own, but you can obviously activate this, turn them into a frenzy and doing more damage, etc., increasing their damage. But like I said, they do generally find who to attack on their own if there are enemies around, and they are very good on elites, so you should target them onto there if possible. We then of course have Army of the Dead, which we've just spoken about, and then Revive. Target an area, reviving fallen enemies to fight for you for a time. Now if it's at the start of a run or in a rift, etc., you should really try and find a load of enemies that you could just kill and then revive them, because you do a lot more damage with these. So if there's like a big elite pack or something that you're going to struggle to kill, then do this before approaching that pack if possible, or it could be a little bit more dangerous than if you had revived those mobs. Now, because of the Bones of Rathma sets we're going to be wearing in this build, our revived minions are no longer going to die, and therefore we're going to have a lot more of them up. Our permanent minions, therefore, that aren't dying and are staying up forever, are also going to be reducing the cooldown on our Army of the Dead, just to give you a bit of an idea of how the build works. We've got Decrepify, a crippling curse that reduces the enemy's movement, speed, and damage done. And we're going to gain cooldown reduction again for every enemy cast. So again, doing as many enemies as we can, getting that cooldown reduction in. Bone armor, ripping bones from nearby enemies, dealing damage and creating armor that reduces damage taken per enemy hit. And they're also stunned. And then Siphon Blood with Power Shift, siphoning the blood of the targeted enemy, dealing damage and healing you. The damage increases the longer you siphon the target. Looking then at the passives we've got some defensives mainly on here. Rathma Shield, you cannot lose life for 4 seconds after you use Army of the Dead. This effect cannot occur more than once every 60 seconds. Spreading Malediction, receive a 1% damage bonus for each enemy afflicted by one of your curses. Again, Decrepify is going to affect this one. Grisly Tribute, you are healed for 10% of your life on hit when one of your minions hits an enemy. Of course, with Revive and Command Skeletons, etc., we're going to have loads of minions up, giving us that life back. It isn't the toughest build I've ever played, and therefore I do think these are kind of really needed, along with, of course, Final Service, which is a death get out of jail free card surviving you when you are going to take a killing blow. Let's start off then on the gear with what set we're taking. Of course, it is going to be the Bones of Rathma. This is the Rathma Army of the Dead build, of course. The 2 set then, your permanent minions reduce the cooldown of Army of the Dead by 0.5 seconds each time they deal damage, which is huge for getting that Army of the Dead cooldown down as fast as possible. Your skeletal warriors spawn faster, and your revived minions from our Revive member no longer expire. The 4 set, your minions no longer take damage. You gain 1% damage reduction for 15 seconds each time one of your minions deals damage, and that stacks 75 times, which is crazy. And then each permanent active minion increases the damage of Army of the Dead by 1,750% up to 31,500%, which is crazy. You can now see why, of course, Army of the Dead does such crazy damage. We can have a maximum of 10 minions up from our Revive and 7 on our Command Skeletons, bringing the total permanent minions up to 17. When we do some quick maths in our head then, this brings the Army of the Dead damage bonus up to 29,750%, which is nuts. We then have the Jessup Arms set here. On the one hand and offhand, the 2 set, when the target of your Command Skeletons dies, your skeletons are automatically commanded to attack a nearby target. While your skeletons are commanded to attack a target, you're also going to deal 400% increased damage as well. Because they are up constantly, this obviously synergizes very well with the Rathma set, and obviously the Command Skeletons skill that we already have here. Another really important piece is the headset, and this is for the Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead deals an additional 250% damage and gains the effect of the Unconventional Warfare rune. Now we're also, again, remember, trying to get our cooldowns down as much as possible, namely Army of the Dead, and therefore we're going to put a diamond in here, reducing the cooldown by 12.5% on the max one. Now, if you're not sure what the Unconventional Warfare is, of course you've got me to tell you, this is going to raise up additional skeletons from the ground and attack random targets for 50,000% damage, I think it is, as physical over 4 seconds as well. The Bonds of Selena, again, on the wrists, again increasing the Army of the Dead damaged. Army of the Dead deals 100% increased damage or double this bonus against an active target of command skeletons, which of course we're going to have 7 up of attacking our targets. In Kunai's Cube, and this is where Necromancers are so crazy in Season 31, you can mix and match, meaning we don't have to use one weapon, one armor, one amulet, or ring. We can actually use whatever the hell we like. And we're going to be using 3 weapons here. First one is the Funerary Pick. Siphon Blood, which remember is our other attack here, now drains blood from 2 additional targets, and that is therefore 3 targets. Each target takes 300% increased damage from you, unless there's only 1 target. Then it gains double the increased damage. The bonus from Siphon Blood, Power Shift, is now 20% per stack and benefits all skills. Power Shift, if you can't remember what that is, damage is increased by 10% each time damage is dealt, and this stacks to 10 times. We then have Relina's Shadow Hook on the other weapon slot. Every point of maximum essence increases your damage by 0.5%, and Bone Spikes generate additional essence, which we're not using, but we are going to get that extra maximum essence damage increase. Then we're going to pair that with Tragul's Corroded Fang. The Curse Scythe rune for Grim Scythe now has a 100% increased chance to apply a curse. We don't care, we're not using it. And you're going to deal 200% increased damage to cursed enemies. Now, Decrepify, remember, is our curse, a crippling curse that's going to reduce enemy units' movement speed by 75% and reduce damage of those afflicted enemies. So we can use this, meaning we're going to do basically 200% extra damage to those cursed enemies that we're cursing with Decrepify. And then the more maximum essence we have, the more damage we are going to do. We've got Squirt's Necklace on the neck. When not taking damage, damage is dealt by up to 100% increased, and damage taken is increased by up to 50%. If you've never used Squirts before, it basically stacks. It'll go 1 stack, 2 stacks, 3 stack, until it gets up to the maximum 10 stacks. And because we've got all of our minions out, they are going to be taking some of the, the aggro from us, making that even better. We're also going to take Dainty's Binding on the belt, basically meaning that we take less damage when anyone is afflicted by a curse. Again, that scales off Decrepify. On the other rings, then it's Crispin's Sentence. You deal 100% increased damage against slowed enemies, or triple this bonus against enemies afflicted by any other type of controlling effect. Let's remember then, again, on our Curse Decrepify, that is going to affect that. And on the other one, we can use the Ring of Royal Grandeur, meaning that we only have to have 5 out of 6 on the Rathma set, etc., 2 out of 3 on other sets, etc., etc., etc. Looking at the actual gems we're taking then, well, to start with, we've already spoken about the headpieces cooldown reduction diamond. The rest of it, we're just putting intelligence on there for obviously more damage. You can, of course, change these out if you want more life, and you could put diamonds in the armor for resist. But I think damage in this build is going to be better. Looking at the legendary gems, we've got the Esoteric Alteration, gaining 60% non-physical damage reduction, while below half-life your resistances are increased. Bane of the Trapped, increasing damage against enemies under the effects of controlling impairing effects by 60%. And that, of course, again, is going to come off your Decrepify, for example, but also you're going to gain an aura that's actually going to slow down enemies as well when you are close to them, which, again, this gem actually works hand in hand with itself. Lastly, it's going to be Zay's Stone of Vengeance. Damage you deal is increased by 16% for every 10 yards between you and enemy hit, 20% chance to hit to stun an enemy for 1 second as well. If you are finding in this build that you are struggling to survive, which could be an issue with it, like I said, replace those gems with some diamonds in the chest, etc. And also on Zay's Stone of Vengeance, what you could put in there is something like the Molten Wildebeest's Gizzard, giving you health regen, or the Gogok of Swiftness, increasing your dodge chance and also attack speed, giving you a bit of survivability while not hindering your DPS too much. I actually recommend taking the Enchantress for this build. You can take the Templar if you wish for a bit more survivability, again, but the weapons and gear you're putting on either of them are pretty much the same, apart from, of course, the Focus or Relic. It's going to be the same thing. If you take the Templar, get the one where it can't die. Same with the Enchantress, just that obviously one is a Focus, one is a Relic. The skills you're going to put on there is Temporal Pulse. Enchantress casts a guided orb that deals damage as arcane to enemies and slows them, again, based on their intelligence. That's why we're going to put all intelligence gems into the Enchantress's gear when we can. Of course, they're getting more slow. We're doing more damage because of it. Prophetic Harmony, reducing your skills cooldowns by 5%, again, based on the Enchantress's intellect. So again, more cooldown reduction for us on our Army of the Dead. Powered Shield, reducing damage by 6% for range attacks, increasing armor, and slowing melee attackers, again, slowing them for more damage, again, based off the Enchantress's intellect. And then we've got Fate Slaps, which is a get out of jail free card if you take a killing blow. On the gear, we've got the Thunder Fury. This is going to do some weapon damage, lightning damage, and it's also going to bounce around to 5 targets and slow them as well. It's going to reduce their movement speed by 30%, again, slowing the targets. I like to put the Oculus Ring on all of my followers. It grants a circle on the ground. You stand in it, you do more damage when it appears. End of. The Emanates effects we've got then is the Nemesis Bracers, meaning shrines are going to spawn an enemy champion, of course increasing the speed at which you can get through rifts and greater rifts. Flavor of Time, again, I always put on the neck. Pylon effects are going to last twice as long. Emanates as well, so it's going to affect you too. Mempho of Twilight on the helm, adding experience there. Homing pads are really good. Basically, what these do, again, is it affects you because it's emanates, and that's what that means. It affects you and the follower. These ones actually make it so that normally you get interrupted if you're trying to cast a town portal spell. When enemies are attacking you, you will no longer be interrupted when casting this. And it's also going to give you a damage shield, especially if you're playing on hardcore, where you're like, oh, I need to get out of here immediately. This is really useful. And lastly, on the gloves, it's the Gloves of Worship, where shrine effects are going to last for 10 minutes. If you have just leveled up to 70 and you're not sure where to put your Paragon points yet, then first up in core, we're actually going to put them all into movement speed so we can get around quicker. Then we're going to add into maximum essence. Don't forget, on the Kunai's Cube, Relina's Shadow Hook, then every point of maximum essence increases your damage by 0.5%. That's why it's so important to get those essence points in there as early as possible, because it's actually going to scale, not just giving us more essence, but also giving us more damage. And then after that, like I said, it isn't the toughest of builds, so I'd put some into Vitality, and then once you feel fine, put it into Intellect. On the offensive then, obviously it's going to be cooldown reduction for Army of the Dead, then we're going to go on to attack speed, then we're going to go on to critical hit damage, and then go on to crit chance. On defense, it's going to be armor, then adding more life, then resistances, and then lastly regen, and lastly, but literally lastly this time, on utility, we're going to go for area damage, of course, with Army of the Dead, area life per hit coming after that, resource cost reduction, again helping with maximum essence, and then gold radius, of course, which we don't really care too much about. Looking at the stat priorities, first and foremost, again, it's going to be cooldown reduction. That's what this build is all about. Then we're going to look at physical damage, then crit chance and damage itself, area damage, again for Army of the Dead, and then intelligence, quite simply boosting our damage. If you do want to go down further than this on the top priorities, things like attack speed are going to be fine, and then really it's looking at more defensive stats. Diablo guides are something I do new, and I usually do WoW guides on my other main channel. Diablo is something I've played for like 20 plus years since Diablo 1. I've still got my Diablo 1 CD and everything. So if you want me to go into more depth on things like this, please do let me know. I really want to hear your feedback, what you like, what you want to see. Do you want more of a surface level guide like I've given you today, or would you like a real deep dive into it? I really want to know kind of what you guys want. I will be covering all forms of Diablo, whether it's 3, 4, 2, maybe even, and Immortal. So do subscribe and leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy this video. And do click here, or here even, on my left, sorry, if you would like to see other Diablo 3 guides. I will be covering quite a lot of them every season for you. And before we go then, let's just recap on what we're doing here. Of course, we've got our Blood Siphon, as you can see. That's going to go up to 3 enemies, remember. We've got our 7 command skeletons already up here. We're going to be using our Bone Shield as our defensive. Don't forget to use Decrepify so we can get this up and curse everyone and do loads of damage, etc. on them. Revive you want to do as soon as you go into a rift, etc. Getting those extra 10 minions up, taking us up to 17. And of course, trying to get our cooldown reduction on our Army of the Dead.